Okay. We are here for some Overwatch because that's fun. No, more seriously, we are here for Overwatch Collegiate. We are in the preseason or we are between semesters, however you want to think about this. But this is looking forward to the spring semester that I think most people have gone back to at this point or are just getting back to. Northeastern's was back a couple weeks, so, my timeline gets a little bit mixed up here. But we are looking towards the spring. And I don't generally hide these. You can initially see what my thoughts are right here. Just to give this a little bit of comparison to where we finished last semester, let's go ahead and pull up last semester's rankings just as a comparison. This is roughly how last semester ended for me in terms of rankings. These are my new rankings, so you can look for differences there. I'll go over them as we get here. The things that would be wrong about this is I didn't re-upload CSULB and a couple others that at the beginning of the semester didn't have an icon that would have been there for the actual video last time. But looking at this, what we're doing heading into the season is I'm putting Winthrop back up here in the potential champions tier. I don't think it's any secret. I don't think I'm leaking anything. I'm pretty sure it's been officially announced that they have gotten a new DPS player there. I don't It doesn't really matter if that player is better or worse than previous existing whatever DPS players. I think what matters for Winthrop is that program, are those players going to care about Collegiate in a way that they didn't really seem to last semester? And I think a lot of them not caring last semester was somewhat meta related. Obviously, a lot had to do with outside commitments, OWCS, CS, Face It, World Cup, those sorts of things. But I think we're going to see, as we've left that meta, that both Winthrop and Shock, which for a bit had a lot of overlap there, really didn't like. I think we're going to see that school take it at least a little bit more seriously, and more matches are going to look closer to the end of the season looked, as opposed to ISU just rolling over them like they did most matches earlier in the semester before ABC playoffs, etc. That said, I do expect ISU will still be our final champions because that program and those players do seem to care more. But we shall see. Fisher got third place, as we know, last season in two major things, both in ABC and NECC. They did drop to Siena Heights. You'll notice Siena Heights is much lower than I would have had them for, or not like hugely lower, but I think I had them in like 6th or 7th place, maybe a little bit lower than that before, and now they've dropped a little bit more. Fisher, we know a little bit in theory about roster moves there. Nothing that I think is crazy. They're going to stay about where they are. They would need some crazy moves to actually get up here with these two. They don't have them as best I can tell, but their roster isn't really getting weaker either. Or if it is, not meaningfully. So this seems like a pretty good place to leave them. Now, this might have seemed like a little bit of an over-performance for Fisher compared to what we might expect out of a Northwood or a Maryville based on rosters, etc. There was, a little bit of a, hey, that's a bit of an over-performance for Fisher. But they did it, and the reality is we didn't see great care from Maryville last semester, great care from Northwood last semester for most of the semester. I'm not hugely expecting that to change, be different, etc. And I'm cross-programming. I've got this pulled up. Yeah, that's fine. We'll ignore that. That's UCSD versus UCLA. There's a UC match going on, which I wouldn't have done this during if I hadn't already said I was going to do this. But hey, that's fine. I don't want to pull away collegiate viewership. But then from there, Fisher keeping in 3 spot makes sense. Bryant Stratton, roster changes don't seem meaningful there. Looks like they should have the exact same 5 starters as last semester. This was certainly a great finish for them last semester, but I don't think this is a one-off anymore. It looked to me like both Manually and Peace leveled up meaningfully during what I would call the time frame of last semester, not necessarily from their collegiate play, but the level of game play from those two players does seem to have gone up pretty significantly over the last 4 to 6 months. Manually is way better in my opinion, or at least had a way better season in terms of his individual play this last semester than he did the semester before that, in the prior year or the prior academic year, etc. And Peace, of course, I don't think that's a surprise to anyone. Peace did quite well in the last meta. It seems to already be doing well, as we can see in OWCS qualifiers again. Peace is having a good time. I expect this team to be pretty darn good. I'm trying not to leak things that haven't been officially announced. So if you guys want me to talk with more specificity about rosters and things that are there, refer to specific players, etc., leak it yourself in chat, and then I can react as if it's true. But I'm trying not to be a source of leaks here because that's how you get your contacts burned, etc. Northwood does have. Northwood was not checked in until the very end. At the very end, they played well, but they were embarrassing for that program, for that quality of player, for what's, been Northwood's legacy. That was embarrassing last semester. They, didn't actually salvage themselves and make their deep run, even though they played much more seriously at the very end in ABC. They weren't able to salvage it because there were other schools that were, also pushing hard, not you, that were also pushing hard and going crazy and would not be upset, etc. And, that shouldn't even be an upset. You generally, historically have expected Northwood to just be able to beat them, but couldn't. I think in part because Northwood wasn't taking it seriously for much of the semester. So again, bringing in a couple new people is going to help them. One player coming back that's maybe been there before and one new player. Again, that tends to be renewed motivation, which I think is going to be a good thing. I think motivation is actually potentially very important this semester, in part because you're probably going to see some schools, perhaps like Bellevue, trying to field teams to get their best combination of players. They have to steal players that would rather be playing other video games like Marvel Rivals and just get them to show up for matches or that sort of thing. Or do you replace them with someone much, 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 much worse who will also scrim, that sort of thing? Like, you look at some of that stuff, I think having players that having more motivation, especially after last semester where we saw a number of schools with low motivation, is going to be important for being successful there. These three didn't seem to have the best motivation for winning Collegiate there. Just saying. But hey. Hey, Brethko. OU number one, Ohio University. I don't think I've got you guys on here. Sorry. I might have you down in here. I don't think I've got you on here. You guys did not perform in ABC last time. Sorry. Okay, so I probably have you down here if I look closely enough. I've had you down here in certainly many previous versions of this template or previous templates. Moving on from this, we were talking about Northwood. Northwood's got some new blood coming in that I think will help, some returning blood in there, but I expect them to move up. Again, this is better than their previous placement as far as I'm concerned, because you can see I previously had Northwood sort of at the back of this tier. Now I'm putting Northwood, as we can see, back ahead of UC Irvine, back ahead of Maryville. Maryville was already behind them. Maryville was a full tier down. I have brought Maryville back up, and the reason that I'm willing to bring Maryville back up is two things. One of which is some of their players do look like, hey, they care a little bit more about the video game, I'll just say, based on what we're seeing in OWCS compared to what their care levels in the previous semester. But also, Maryville is one of those schools that has a little bit of a history of treating the titles of the two major Blizzard run Overwatch collegiate tournaments as different things. You'll notice it's called Homecoming in the fall, whereas it's called the Collegiate Championship in the spring. The prize pools aren't hugely different anymore. They used to be more different, but technically speaking, the spring title has been the bigger title, is the championship, even though I don't think very many schools buy into that. I think they're viewed pretty equally. Maryville is one of the schools that has historically viewed those as a little bit different and said, hey, we'll win in the spring when it matters. To the point of which they've enrolled as the Saints with club team members, with other stuff in the fall, and then come back and been like, nope, and now we're serious in the spring there. So we're entering the spring. The program might not be quite as tolerant of their players, phoning it in as hard as some of them did in the fall. I also think some of the players that may have been guilty of that are a little bit more interested in playing the game in general, heading into the spring based on what we're seeing here, based on what's happening in OWCS. So I do have them back up here in this upper core tier. That was your leak? Oh, got it, Fresco. Happy to know that your leak was that Ohio was number one there. Good to know. Good to know. Okay. So Irvine shouldn't have any meaningful changes. That should be about where they were. This, obviously, I think last semester was one of their better performances. I would expect a little bit of a reversion to the mean there, which still has them as a very good school, perhaps in this upper area. But I don't know that they're going to run much deeper in this upper area like they did last semester. Reversion to the mean. We are in a different meta than we were. We were in the Juno Brawl Tank era for basically the entirety of the fall semester, and that is fine. That is a thing. You needed to perform in that meta, but you're going to see reversions to the mean. In terms of my predictions of where teams are going to do this semester as we are in a different meta here. Because this is sort of a how are they right now, as well as a how are they going to be this semester. We're sort of trying to combine that all into one. Then we've got St. Clair. I believe it's public knowledge that St. Clair has picked up a new player, a new tank player specifically. That should serve them well and is why I have moved them towards the front of this tier. I don't have them in the next tier up. I just don't think they're there in the next tier up. But we do see here, I suppose I should grab as reference what previous homecoming results looks like, just so that we have that for you guys. Yeah, I can bring that over, 2024 homecoming. So we can see over here, St. Clair's run was not particularly good, but then they had a better one in Nace, where they did pick up a win over, I believe it was Blinn, slightly after a patch there. After this ended in Nace, so they were able to run a bit deeper there. Regardless, I have them down here. I have them at the top of this core collegiate tier, when before I had them kind of quite a bit deeper in the core collegiate tier. Maryville obviously moved up since then. Bellevue is going to take a bit of a step back, and I'll explain why in just a moment. Siena Heights as well. So let's get to those two. First, I'll talk about Blinn. Some of you might be expecting Blinn to tank way harder. Like, hey, wait, Blinn doesn't, this I don't think is a secret. Blinn hasn't figured out what they're going to do about Sunset not being there anymore. Publicly shared in the Discord server that he was done after the fall semester there. So do they have a hit scan? Did they recruit one? Does anyone have answers? Does anyone want to leak anything in chat right now? But my expectation is that as long as they're able to find something, not even like good tier 3 poach, but like replacement level grandmaster at the school, they'll probably be okay. They've got some players in Sky Sniper and Regime getting some pretty good reps now on teams that they are playing at, sort of towards the end of last semester, beginning of this semester now, etc. Those two are getting some good reps. I think these guys will hold on and be okay here, and so I'm leaving this. Obviously, this could be wrong if they have to go get a diamond DPS player or something to fill out their roster because they just don't have any depth that either they were able to recruit or were able to find or were able to poach over from Valorant or something and go, hey, you can aim, you can do, sort of thing. They could fall, but what I would emphasize is historically in collegiate Overwatch, situations like the Boise situation where they graduated a couple players and then still had talent on their team, but just completely checked out and couldn't hang at the top at all anymore, has historically been more rare than, hey, a couple players left, but you re-scramble and move pieces around and still have a pretty competitive, pretty good, not that much further back team if it wasn't your star player that left, Boise Clear is leaving, then, Bagel graduating, for example. But anyways, that's why I guess I would say I'm being, I'm willing to bet a little bit on Blinn here that they are not going to collapse there. They got IDDQD. Did they now, Frisco? Uh-huh. Great league, great league. I've got Frisco trolling me. I've got Fresco trolling me. This is fantastic, fantastic. Okay, so Blinn is here. Blinn certainly has some downwards vulnerability based on that roster shenanigans, but we shall see. I think they're going to pull out and still be within the core just fine. Maybe they'll end up in lower core. I don't think they're going to go end up in the pit. When you have four players experienced to the level that their rest of their team is, it's generally hard to actually fall too bad, get too bad, as long as you can find just a GM player for the last slot. I'm not kidding. But hey, we'll see. We'll see. Bellevue, I think, is going to be in much the same situation, but I also expect a reversion to the mean for Bellevue. And that's bad for Bellevue, unfortunately. Bellevue has historically disappointed, underperformed, not done as well as their roster would lead you to believe that they should. This last semester, they did okay. We can look at Bellevue here. We can see that their finish was top 8. That's pretty solid. Nothing wrong with that. That's better than a lot of finishes that they've had. I expect that to get worse. It's public knowledge that their flex support is, wants to go hard in Marvel Rivals. When people announce on Twitter that they're quitting Overwatch to go do Rivals, sometimes that means, everything, etc., not looking back at all. Sometimes that means I'm not pursuing the path to pro scene, but I'm still going to do Collegiate. Sometimes that means somewhere in between. Sometimes that means 3 days later I'm back, I'm playing Overwatch. My expectation here, because there are scholarship dollars on the line and not a insignificant amount of them, is that their players will still come together. And while there's one who, it's announced and been, their Rivals is their future, I do suspect they have at least one more player on that roster who will be playing probably more Rivals than Overwatch. I still expect the team will come together to play in matches and probably to scrim for like a week or two before matches get hard in ABC. That's about sort of what I'd expect. Last semester's Bellevue, they were scrimming. They were making sure that they were on it when they were scrimming in terms of, hey, they got blocks. They started early. They took lots of blocks. You could see them grab 6 blocks a week, that sort of thing. You could see it. That's not necessarily been the historic Bellevue, and I think we're probably going to see that reversion because I think Bellevue's going to be stuck in a situation of, hey, the best we can do is get our players together for matches and for a little bit of scrimming before matches. But we'll see. If they went and got people and I don't know about it, fantastic, good on them. But that's actually hard to do in the middle of a semester change, and even harder for schools that aren't junior colleges, etc. Hey, Sniper, were you here when I was talking about how I thought you guys would be fine? Because what was I saying? Because you were, even though you have lost a player there, you're surrounded by 4 players at an experience level that I think are going to tough it out as long as you can find even just a, soaking wet GM 5th player. Oh, okay. Well, I was pointing out that I think you guys will hold on. You might fall down into lower core. Yes, there's the possibility of you falling lower, but I really don't see you falling lower with, the remaining 4 players that you have there, as long as you're not stuck going and getting literally a plat player for the 5th spot, which I think even within your system, even if you couldn't get any recruiting done, you'll be able to find someone who's Masters GM and make it work well enough, and that you and Regime are getting good reps out there on the teams you're playing on right now outside of Blinn. Most of you have been grinding very hard. I don't see us being top, but we should be the same even with lower player. Yeah. You've got a similar read. You have a similar read on you guys to what I have on you. That makes sense. So that sort of covers this. Again, in theory, some vulnerability with these two. I suspect these guys will be fine. I suspect this will just be a case of a bit more of a reversion to a mean for them, where instead of in a top 8 spot, they might end in a top 14, 18, that sort of thing spot. But for now, I'm going to leave them here. I suspect Bellevue is going to get stuck just doing very light scrimming, mostly scrimming just before matches start and sort of seeing what happens. But we shall see. Moving on from here, we have Siena Heights. This is a little lower than I had Siena Heights at the end of last semester. The impressive thing Siena Heights did at the end of last semester was beat Fisher in a tournament. Now, it was a tournament that carried less prestige than the tournaments Fisher got third in, which were Homecoming, ABC, and NECC. Those are, of course, much more prestigious than where Siena Heights beat them at the end of the semester, but Siena Heights' win was good for them. The reason I'm going to be a bit lower on them going into this season is that core just dealt with more drama in the DQ, four-eyed, whatever in OWCS qualifiers when they should have had a spot for the double bracket elimination, but then didn't. Disqualification. I don't know. I don't hugely care what happened there. I don't need to know the truth or the story or whatever. That's not actually relevant to me. It's not a collegiate thing, but it just looks like, given the roster that's playing is looking a little more removed from last semester. Last semester that roster was pretty frequently playing together as Tanuki. It looks like they've split up a little bit more in how they're playing, so their reps as Tanuki, which they're not associated with anymore, but the reps as four-eyed or whatever aren't as transferable to Siena Heights anymore, and I think that's going to hurt them a little bit, and just that they can't quite seem to find a way to be successful, and that there constantly seems to be some level of drama, that spelled out to me, should we be worried about a ticking time bomb scenario of, hey, how is this going to, yeah, that's too many dashes for my clock, but how is this going to work out? I'm willing to predict a little bit lower there than the heights of what they had last semester, though, hey, win over Fisher last semester, very good, and I still do have them in the core. ASU is here. ASU is in the lower core here. ASU has been a, top 10 or so school for a bit. This is probably a little bit low for them, but obviously they had the loss to Converse, I believe it was, at the end of last semester. And that, that blocks them out. I'm not crazy. It was the loss to Converse. I'm not crazy. It was the loss to Converse. Yes, they had the loss to that. They had said they just didn't run an OWCS. They did with Zoe instead of Anhu, I believe. And if Zoe's actually transferred there, that would be meaningful, and that, would be maybe I need to reevaluate this. But I think that was probably just an availability question. In terms of them running Zoe for the OWCS qualifier, which I probably have up here. They aren't out yet. They still, Tanuki later today. They would have to beat Tanuki and then the winner of this. My guess, I could be wrong here. I'm ready to be proven wrong, is that one of these two teams is going to get through, and then either Supernova or Amplify is going to get through it. But that's not collegiate. We only talked about it because ASU is right here, and if ASU gets through it, that's great for the collegiate scene. I'm all for it, even if Zoe isn't really on that team. Okay. So yes, I have ASU here. Would not at all be surprised to see ASU climb back up. ASU can definitely, when they're in their groove, could be the meta shift, could be whatever, can definitely hang with a St. Clair, even with an improved St. Clair that's, picked up a new player that they want to run. Could hang with a Maryville that is phoning it in, certainly. Could hang with an Irvine if ASU is playing great, but I'm expecting Maryville to phone it in less this semester. Irvine was hungry last semester and looks to have mostly the same roster. I expect Northwood to be a little more hungry this semester, so I don't think ASU will reach these heights. ASU could easily find themselves back in here, though. We shall see. Converse, I think we're down to the final semester for most of the Converse crew. I could be wrong there, but I think this was the last year for most of that team, and Converse Gold will take over, or they'll have to do some recruiting, or whatever the case is there. I think that's part of why they were sort of working with Converse Gold, training Converse Gold, scrimming them, that sort of thing, because they know they're sort of out. Obviously, last semester for them, they had hurricane problems. Totally makes sense that they weren't dialed in hard last semester, but I don't know how much I expect them to be dialed in this final semester, when last semester maybe wasn't the heights that they would have wanted, sort of thing. It's a little hard to go, okay, now for this final semester, are we going to lock in and go do this and leave with the absolute best finish we could have gotten? That'll be fun. I hope they do, because that'll certainly be more interesting, and that's what you want to see out of your graduating seniors there, which I believe many of them are going to be. But I think they may feel like their highest heights are behind them at this point, and the hurricane happened last semester, that they're looking towards their junior team here might signal that that's not what's going to happen. But again, that's just me making predictions. This is a preseason tier list, effectively. Matches haven't been played yet. All we can do is look at transfers and rumors and what we know about them. Legacy, mostly, last semester. That's going to be weighed heavier than further back legacy. And then reading the tea leaves, vibe check, whatever you want to call it, which, the Converse rating definitely has a little bit of. I hope that they're hungry. I want to see that happen. I don't think they would have been ones who would have been particularly upset by the meta that a lot of teams didn't like last season, but we shall see. Agreed with Sienna Heights take. Yeah, yeah. I sense trouble there. Hey, Twin Salty. Hope you're doing well. We just wrapped up talking about. Well, we actually just wrapped up talking about Converse, but before that, we were talking about ASU and their good run that's happening here. They do have Zoe in there, but their good run that's happening here in OWCS, and they are still knocked a little bit because they did lose to Converse last semester. You can see I have them ahead of Converse here. I do expect more of a reversion to the mean for them than for Converse. I expect ASU to go up a little, Converse to stay fine, but to stay at the lower end of core collegiate after last semester, because I think most of them are graduating. I think it's going to be hard. They could totally go the other way, though, and go, no, we're graduating. Last semester was bad, but that was weather stuff. This is it. This is the last chance. Let's go hard. Like, that could totally happen, and they could tear it up. We've seen that team do great upsets before on number 2, number 3 teams in the past, and we all would love to see that Converse again. Cumberland, they're sort of, I guess, Sienna Heights is now the newest comer to the core, but Cumberland was sort of last season's proven newcomer. They broke into the core. They said, no, we're not just going to beat one person in the core. We're going to get multiple wins against core teams here, which they did. They belong here. I do think the back of the core is the right place for them right now. If we look at what they did here, we can see that they did beat Bellevue here, which was fantastic. Good for them. Lost to Bryant Stratton, but Bryant Stratton was a top 4 team there. No shame to be had. And then lost it out to Blinn and went out. So that's fine. They got other wins elsewhere. Cumberland, I'm happy to see them in the scene. It's always fun to see a new team sort of break into the core and stick there, because old teams leave. I don't have UTD in the core anymore. I don't have UCSD in the core anymore. These are schools that you would, if you have been around this scene long enough, recognize, oh yeah, those used to be consistent top 20 teams. SCAD, Northeastern, am I missing anyone? Santa Cruz, if I go back long enough. Yeah, like there are teams where it was like these teams, all of these teams in different eras were firmly in the core, and as some fell out, others are going to go in, and I think they've done that. That said, let's see them. They've already proven it. They got multiple wins, but now we're in a new semester. You got to keep up with you got to keep up with it. It's got to not be the semester that they did it in was kind of one long slow brawl thing. They didn't play that. I know they played a fair bit of Queen, but we got to see it. Let's establish some legacy here so that they get the vote recognition. Yep, Ohio State. That's a good one. Ohio State and Harrisburg, I would have to go scroll down to get, but those would be very good points. Those would be firmly core. This was a champion tier team for a long time, and this was firmly a top 16 core collegiate, etc. team for a long time. Okay. So that was Cumberland, and this is where I'm drawing the line, and it's fewer teams than perhaps in the past. We've got 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We've got only 14 teams here that I've got in what I'm considering core collegiate right now. I don't actually think that any of the teams below this line at this moment really give us reason to believe that they have any proven ability to trade with these top 14 teams. Obviously, there's a second line here that's just reality because I'm sorry. Lynn's probably not beating ISU. I think you guys got stuck with no, you guys got stuck with like Winthrop 5 times in 3 weeks or something. Maybe it was ISU. Regardless, the point that I'm making is this is sort of our core collegiate. For the most part, it's none of the teams below this line really have a proven belief at the moment that they're going to trade here. Have some of these teams done it in the past? Absolutely. Does Mizzou's roster make us believe they could do it? Yup. Rutgers roster? Yup. Has Illinois Orange done it in the past? Yup. Has Georgia Tech done it in the past? For a little bit. Has Northeastern done it in the past? Yup. Did UTD even do it last semester? Sure. But with where things actually stand right now, I don't consider any of these teams sort of in the core. I actually do consider this the cutoff. I consider our core a little bit smaller than usual, only being down to 14. I suppose it's not technically 14 teams, it's 12 teams because these two aren't in it, but I'll include them and call it top 14 is currently my cutoff. I then have this sort of rear guard tier. Rear guard tier is if these guys want to move up, you've got to do two things. You've really got to beat these guys twice, maybe beating them once if you've been sitting in this rear guard for a bit and have consistently denied the outsiders, consistently said, no, you can't beat us, sort of thing. This is sort of the transition tier, we'll call it, and that's what I would. Someone's going to go up. I actually expect a couple things are going to happen. So we look at Mizzou. Mizzou's roster is just good enough to be in the core, but I didn't see the proof last semester. Sorry, I needed to see more. I didn't. That happened. I think they we probably will get there this semester, but I want the wins. I'm hesitant to move people into the core without the wins there, so that's there. Rutgers, obviously, Rutgers has always had a couple strong players there, and then, solid enough roster behind them. I didn't notice either of their Tapper neutral playing in OWCS. Obviously, for Tap, that would be a little bit, I suppose, of a nationality you count as an import. Probably still could have found a team. Probably didn't want to. Probably wanted to take the holidays off, would be my guess for both of them. They've been competing in Face It, etc. But what does that mean for Drive Oval Devotion level? Is this team going to do better now that the meta shifts? Almost certainly. A lot of teams didn't like the old meta. My team, Rutgers, they didn't. They didn't really either. There's a lot of teams that really didn't like. Technically, St. Clair didn't either, though they have their own funny Mauga shenanigans. But the point that I'm getting to there is they could easily go up based on, hey, the meta has shifted and their star players are able to do things again more now. I don't really expect heavy scrim environment investment from these guys because they just haven't been willing to do that. They're players that are busy elsewhere go, no, I don't want to do also more scrims with my collegiate team. So that would usually be a mark against, but we shall see. Rutgers has certainly been up here in upper core in the past. Rutgers is, sort of the famous used to be club program, now a varsity program. Let's see what they do. I don't think they have any recruits. I'm almost positive they don't have any recruits this semester. And if they do, they're natural. It's not a result of them having become varsity, but them becoming varsity may cause them to have more real recruiting in the future, and that could be interesting to watch. Regardless, that's Rutgers. They've certainly got some upward swing to them. These would be two of our most probable to go up there. Mizzou, because the roster just looks like it belongs there. Rutgers, because they've literally been there before. Illinois Orange is probably going to get me some funny looks here, because I have been one of the most critical people of Illinois Orange in terms of they haven't shown me wins I care about in a year and a half. So what are they still doing in this even rear guard tier? Why are they just not in the pit at this point? And they have 2 losses last semester to CSULB. So what are they doing ahead of CSULB? I can explain. I can explain. I don't do this stuff willy nilly. It's not all vibe check, etc. There is a thought process. So what I'm looking at here, the team at the start of lower core is Siena Heights. Um, you did. CSULB Frisco did beat Illinois Orange there. So what I would say here is there's 2 things that are holding me back from putting CSULB ahead of Illinois Orange. One, CSULB has no proven record beyond beyond last semester. CSULB, like they were last relevant before last semester, 2.5 years ago, and never in a top 20 conversation way. Like they were a top 32 relevant team if I go like 2 years back. I think I remember playing them in a predecessor to the current ABC format where you did 10 rounds of Swiss and then you did seeding matches after that where like the 10-0 team didn't play in the seeding matches, but like all of the 9-1 teams played each other, all of the 8-2 teams played each other, and the 7-3 teams had like a 64-person bracket that one team got through that actually made it back into the playoffs, etc. And that was like an extra round that was played for seeding. And I remember running into CSULB in that a couple years ago, which predates all of you. It's probably closer to 2.5, 3 years ago at this point. I'm old. So yeah, CSULB doesn't have, and of course, well, if it's so long ago, it doesn't matter, different players, whatever. Sure. The point that I'm making is the last meta that we just had, last season with Juno Brawl Tank, Juno Orisa for most of it, Juno Mauga at the end there. CSULB did beat Illinois in that. Good on them. But that's one meta, and one meta that's, I'll say, a little different than the history of Overwatch. Again, we had a lot of teams that really didn't like it, and that's fine. You have to win through metas that you don't like. You have to do well in metas you don't like. You're going to have metas that are better and worse for you, but because CSULB's body of proof is from such a small time frame here, I need to see more. I need to see more. They were never going to, just from beating Illinois Orange, who hadn't proven themselves in years, in more than a year, going to make it up into the core. But the reason they're behind Illinois is because they're not showing me that body of proof. And Chopper looks way better now than he did last semester. I mean, I have eyes. I can see OWCS. Chopper has clearly been on the grind and not just mechanically. And it's possible that means that this team, which is centered around Chopper, Illinois Orange, is going to say, much like Rutgers, no, I'm not doing any scrimming with the team. We're not scrimming, etc., etc. In fact, I sort of expect that to be the case. And then maybe it doesn't really translate because you can't build the system the right way to take advantage the way that Chopper's actual, team, Timeless, Cobra Kai, whatever, has a system that's built to let Chopper go off. Because that team is built to allow Chopper to go off. That's not just Chopper mechanical prowess. Not that Chopper is not mechanically very good. But the point that I'm getting here is we don't know. I don't expect Illinois Orange to scrim. I do, however, think that a Chopper that is playing more seriously is going to elevate that team. And so I think them staying in this rear guard position probably makes sense. But hey, you guys can yell at me, tell me I'm wrong. CSULB guys, you guys have every right to go, WTF, we beat them twice and you still put them ahead of us. New semester, it was in one meta. Prove me a hater, prove me wrong. Go beat Mizzou and, things will be great. Okay. Georgia Tech wasn't super impressive last semester. They got blocked by Cumberland a couple times. I don't think they got any great matches to prove themselves on outside of that. They might have had like a Maryland, which was just too far away for them to reach on. But I think they got blocked a couple times by Cumberland last semester. The semester before, they were in the core. So this, sort of proving grounds, rear guard of the core, outside the core, probably still feels like the right place for them. And then Briarcliff is here. Last semester's Briarcliff would not have been here. They were not They just weren't at the borderline top 20 level. They weren't looking in on the core. They were firmly outside the core, but they do have Mari now. The announcement that we got going into last semester of, oh, Mari, and then Mari wasn't actually on the team last semester. That should be over now. They should actually have Mari. I was looking at the rumors that they may have some other players that would have made it interesting. Doesn't look like that's happening. If I'm wrong and that is happening, yeah, they'll almost certainly have a roster that looks a lot more like Mizzou's. And with a roster that looks like Mizzou, you would expect them to find their way in here if they can just find the matches against these teams to prove it. But I don't think that's the case. I think really they're looking at just Mari and might even be looking at a minor roster hit beyond that. So net positive, but not as much of an upswing. Not as much of an upswing as I had hoped to see out of them, and not as much of an upswing as might have been expected even from just the Mari there. But again, we shall see. Adding Mari to a roster definitely makes it meaningfully better. And then we are just into the pit. The pit is a mess. Yes, I try to keep the pit in order, but everyone in the pit will tell me I'm wrong about the order. That's unavoidable because people in the pit fundamentally have weak enough Overwatch skills that they are able to handle less things. Like, it may be that, I don't know, Utah can beat Tamu consistently, just fine, etc., but I don't know, maybe Illinois Wesley has a Reinhardt Junkrat strat that Taimu can handle just fine, no problem, but beats Utah. And the reason I'm making these up, of course, but the reason for that, the reason that this is always going to be a mess here is teams in the pit are lacking enough fundamentals that they don't just consistently beat teams that they are better than. Yes, they still more often beat teams that they're better than, but there are enough holes in their array of solutions that they can just get stuck and not be able to handle things that a team up here would go, no, we have this tool for this tool for this tool for this, and this tool for this, and that covers basically anything we could run into, or no, our fundamentals are so good, or mechanically we're just so much better that even if you're doing cheesy stuff, unless it is truly, truly meta breaking, you just can't get through what we can do to you mechanically, so it just doesn't matter, sort of thing. The teams in the pit don't have that, so it's always going to be messy, and I know I'm always going to be hearing about, oh no, you're wrong, SCAD actually beat UCSD, but then UCSD beats Banana Slugs, but then Banana Slugs beat Miami, Ohio, but Miami, Ohio beat SCAD. That's not a real thing, but the point is that concept is a very real thing. When am I establishing temporal university? Ooh. I don't think now is a good time to be trying to become a university, an accredited university, given that they're mostly beginning to face enrollment shortages, and we expect universities to be closing over the next decade. I don't think now is a good time, and the population is also shrinking. Like, now is not a good time to be like, hey, let's go build another university. Supply and demand figures there. Sorry, Cohen. Located in the box you live in under the bridge. Thank you. I always turn on my streams when I want to get insulted. That's reliable. So yeah, going down in here, I'll briefly talk about some of these, but it's going to be pretty brief. Fisher's second team, regardless of what the roster ends up looking like, Fisher will have a credible second team that could very well be in the rear guard tier. Fisher in the past has gotten a second team into the core, but not consistently. UTD obviously did get a good win last semester. That was good for them. I know there was the whole Petal drama of like, hey, you brought Petal in when he was just a sub and he just played only as a sub the whole time, and then you brought him in and beat a team that you weren't expected to beat, and there's drama of like, well, he's on the team, and of course UTD is allowed to do that. UTD is 100% allowed to do that, but people who rank them, myself included, are going to go, well, do you usually bring Petal in? No, we bring in Petal like 1 in 40 matches. Okay, then I will factor in the probability in my placement that, about 1 in 40, 1 in 30 times you'll bring him in. Again, Maybe he's going to play more seriously this semester, more often this semester. Maybe he's back on his grind set and is going to look like 2020, 2021 pedal again. I don't know. I believe that of Chopper, that Chopper's back a bit on the grind set and looking good again. I would need to see that something, I would need to see gameplay from Pedal to be like, oh, that is going to be a huge impact again. And I also would need to be told and see Pedal's actually playing both in scrims and matches again on the regular for UTD. Ball State got the win over Siena Heights last semester. Siena Heights is a very up and down team, so I don't give that like they were able to do it, but I'm not looking at that as, oh my goodness, they beat a team that was able to beat Fisher. The Siena Heights that they beat is not the same creature as the Siena Heights that beat Fisher, and I'm also not convinced that the Fisher that lost to Siena Heights is the same creature that got third in ABC. That's a little bit more asterisked on, but Siena Heights is just too all over the place as a team. They are. That said, Ball State has to be good enough that they can beat that they could beat a version of Siena Heights last semester, and they were. I don't believe there's any changes to the rosters, so that is what it is. Arcadia did something at the end of NECC. Let me see if I've got that pulled up, and then I will probably be on a pretty much on a wrap there. Arcadia, who did you guys beat in the end? Arcadia, they beat Converse Gold, which they're ahead of, and they beat Georgia Tech. Again, Arcadia has no history in terms of, hey, long, consistent team that's been in the mix at a high level. Georgia Tech does have a longer history there, so I'm leaving this like this. We are in a different meta. Arcadia, congrats. You found something that works for you. Now do it again in a different meta is exactly what I want to see. As always, do it twice. Do it to two different opponents of a similar or even higher tier. That's what we want to see. I am perfectly ready to move you. I am perfectly happy to move Georgia Tech down to move you guys up, but this is a case of I need to see success in preferably in multiple metas, but I would especially like to see success in a meta that wasn't quite as warping as the meta of last semester, especially the meta of late last semester, where very few teams understand Mauga. Northeastern does. Very few teams understand Mauga. Okay. And then Utah, Converse Gold, they got some okay wins last semester, and then we sort of continue through here. This is all just a thing. I will briefly plug, maybe I'll even throw it in my own chat because I think I'm going to wrap up here. We do have the UC Cup, which I'll throw into my own chat here, just as a link there, where it looks like we have... Here, I'll pull up the bracket. We've got it here. The UC system, which is, there's two real California university systems. There's the California State University and the University of California. Those are two different systems. California State University would be something like CSULB, California State University Long Beach. UCI would be University of California Irvine, University of California San Diego. And we can see as we're running through the bracket here, we do see, and some of these team schools are very much on our list. Irvine, of course, is way above the rest of them, but we also have San Diego, LA, Santa Cruz. Those are all on our list. Riverside has been here in previous years. So there's UC schools that we perhaps care about, keep an eye on. They have a tournament going, and Irvine is going to win that tournament. Sorry, spoilers. But we can see San Diego, it looks like, made the run to the upper bracket semifinals with them, which is cool. But obviously, anyone who lost on the Irvine side of the bracket has an excuse, unless they then lose to San Diego and Lars, which they did. This was happening as I started this stream. So San Diego beat LA. Does that reflect what I would have guessed? It does. It reflects history. Roster-wise, who's on UCSD? Okay. Interesting. I wonder if there's an alt in there, or if that is what they're looking at as their roster. Anyway, doesn't hugely matter. As we can see, I have this tournament firmly in the pit, other than Irvine, who hasn't dropped a map and probably isn't going to. But hey, I thought I'd mention it since it was going on and it's collegiate and we like to cover that. Anyone have, yeah, I do have a scarf on there, Blah. How you doing? Anyone have any final questions, thoughts, things? This was just what I wanted to share before the semester started, before Okra got their rankings out. The Okra rankings should be coming out later this week, which would be great. Probably, the weekend, next weekend, that is, would be my guess there, which would be very cool. Preseason rankings. So rather than just me being wrong, the whole committee can be wrong. And schools can surprise us with the pickups that they hid from us that we didn't get intel on that weren't leaked. And also, schools can just prove, hey, no, we can do it. We're hungry. We're not, etc. This meta suits us well. This one doesn't. All that good stuff. Rankings due end of day Tuesday. Yes, yes. Yeah, Fresco, we play you on Tuesday. That'll be fun. That'll be fun. We'll play Ohio, the number one team, apparently. I heard it here first from Fresco. The game is Friday. Oh, even better, Twin Salty. Rankings are due end of day Tuesday. Yep. Aim is by Friday. That as long as graphic design is on the same page as you, Twin Salty, I'm all for it. And then hopefully we'll get Okra Podcast 2, which will be great. I'm always happy to have people on and offer. They rarely take me up on it, but I don't generally schedule these, days in advance for people to line up with either. I will be happy to see the return of Okra Podcast, which I don't know, maybe we did a couple of before, where we can get like multiple members of the committee and I don't know, maybe someone from a team that's not on a committee or a couple people from a team that's not on the committee and like that. I don't know. I'm putting things on someone that's not me to make them great. So, cool. I look forward to that. Keep your eye out for that. Keep your eye out for the Okra rankings, and I will see you all there. Peace. You hope so? Yeah, me too, Twin Salty. Me too. Talk to you soon, man. Peace, everyone. Bye.